Speed and Nguyen's Deep Dive podcast is an official podcast made by Speed and Nguyen with the voice made from Google's Notebook LM. Do not reproduce our podcast without permissions from the owner. Welcome to the Speed and Nguyen's Deep Dive podcast. Picture tuning into your favorite streaming platform tonight, right? Like settling in with a warm meal and just watching a desperate man get hunted down and executed in the middle of a city street.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a heavy image.
Right. And now imagine the executioner was actually tipped off by your neighbor who just earned like a cash bounty for making the call.
Yeah.
The studio audience cheers, the credits roll, and you just set a reminder to tune in tomorrow for the next kill.
I mean, it's a terrifying premise because it takes that, that voyeuristic itch we all have with reality television, and it just completely removes the safety glass. Like, the stakes go from just manufactured drama to literal physical survival.
Exactly. And that is the exact nightmare we are exploring today with Edgar Wright's highly anticipated 2025 cinematic adaptation of The Running Man. We have a pretty formidable stack of sources to guide this deep dive today.
We really do.
Yeah, we are synthesizing reviews from Film Focus Online and Collider, some really detailed analytical ending explainers from MovieWeb, Screen Rant, and Games Radar. Oh, and some very specific YouTube scene recaps, plus this really provocative editorial from Geek Tyrants that kind of completely flips the script on how to interpret the film's climax.
Yeah, the Geek Tyrant piece is wild. But our main objective here is to dissect how this film updates a notoriously gritty 1982 Stephen King novel, which, was originally published under his Richard Bachman pseudonym. We're looking at how they update that for a 2025 audience.
Right.
So we will unpack the mechanics of its dystopian world building and try to decode what its, frankly, highly debated ending is really trying to communicate about modern media consumption.
Yeah, and the film wastes zero time establishing its stakes. Like, right out of the gate, we are introduced to Ben Richards, played by Glenn Powell, who is, really tapping into a very classic, almost old-school action star energy here.
Oh, totally.
He's playing this desperate father trapped in a super bleak near future. His daughter, Kathy, is dying of radiation sickness, and the medication she needs is exclusively available on the black market. And it's just prohibitively expensive.
Right, which is the perfect catalyst.
Exactly. It forces Ben to enter the #1 reality program on the government-run Freevee network, which is, obviously, The Running Man.
And the structural rules of this game are just brutally efficient. Ben basically has to survive for 30 days.
Just 30 days.
Just 30 days. And if he succeeds, he is awarded a $1 billion prize. But he is actively pursued by a team of elite, heavily armed hunters.
Which is bad enough.
Right, but the true danger actually comes from the general public. Like, the entire civilian population is financially incentivized to report his location.
There's this one specific moment, detailed in the YouTube recaps we looked at, that perfectly illustrates exactly how this society functions. So there's this different contestant, a man named Jansky, and he's simply trying to survive the day. He stops to buy a breakfast burrito at a convenience store.
Such a mundane thing.
I know, but the clerk recognizes him from the live broadcast and immediately triggers a network alert to claim the cash bounty.
Right.
Within seconds, hunters descend on the store and literally execute Jansky on the spot. Over a breakfast burrito.
Over a burrito, yeah. And that scene is so crucial because it demonstrates the underlying mechanism of authoritarian control in this universe. The government, they don't solely rely on a police force. They've weaponized the citizenry against itself. It basically operates on an economy of betrayal.
Honestly, it feels like an accelerated, much bloodier version of the algorithmic outrage cycles we see today.
Oh, 100%.
Because we already inhabit digital spaces where platforms incentivize users to expose or shame or tear down others for engagement and clout. The film just takes that abstract digital reward and replaces it with a concrete financial bounty.
Right, and the government's true innovation here is packaging that oppression as entertainment. By turning state-sponsored executions into a game show, they ensure the public remains distracted, deeply divided, and constantly policing one another. It just transforms potential dissidents into eager participants.
But to make a narrative about systemic oppression work, the audience obviously needs a compelling protagonist. And the Ben Richards we see on screen in 2025 is fundamentally different from the character Stephen King penned back in 1982.
The contrast is honestly stark, because King's original Ben Richards was a remarkably harsh, angry, and highly lethal anti-hero.
It was super dark.
Very dark. He was propelled by pure rage and desperation, and he displayed zero hesitation to kill. I mean, the novel features him taking the lives of police officers and operating with this very cynical, ruthless edge.
Whereas the Glenn Powell iteration is positioned much closer to a traditional hero, right? Like, he actively spares his enemies when given the chance.
Exactly.
He outright refuses to take a life unless absolutely necessary for his immediate survival. And the script, it sort of softens the world immediately surrounding him as well. Like, in the source material, Ben's wife, Sheila, is forced into sex work to afford their daughter's medical care. But the 2025 film alters her profession to a struggling waitress.
Yeah, and we see a similar recalibration with the supporting cast, too. Like, consider Elton Parakis, portrayed by Michael Cera.
Oh, that was a surprising casting choice.
Right. But in the novel, Elton is a relatively passive individual who provides Ben temporary shelter, but he's largely helpless against the system. Wright's film actually transforms Elton into an aggressive, capable revolutionary.
Wow.
Yeah, Elton sacrifices himself by luring network guards into his father's booby-trapped home, taking them out to ensure Ben's escape.
That's a huge shift.
Mm-hmm.
And the lead hunter, McConey, played by Lee Pace, he gets a massive backstory overhaul, too.
Oh, definitely.
The film reveals McConey is not merely a corporate mercenary. He is actually a former Running Man contestant.
Which is such a crazy twist.
It is. He survived 29 days out in the city before finally breaking under the psychological pressure and just accepting a lucrative contract from the network to hunt future runners.
McConey really functions as the physical manifestation of Ben's potential failure. Like, he demonstrates exactly how the system grinds down human resilience until you literally become the very thing hunting you.
Okay, but I have to pause here and challenge the core philosophy behind these changes. Because by taking Stephen King's, compromised, dangerous protagonist and turning him into an empathetic, restraint-driven hero, does the film inadvertently water down the story?
That's a fair question.
Right. Because King was delivering a cynical critique of a broken society, making Ben a conventionally, quote-unquote, good guy who refuses to cross moral lines. Kind of feels a bit safe for a dystopian narrative, doesn't it?
Well, that is a legitimate criticism, and it is a major point of contention among purists who prefer the bleakness of the Bachman book. However, we have to look at the mechanics of visual storytelling here.
Okay.
By making Ben explicitly empathetic and morally grounded, Edgar Wright creates a sharper, more visible contrast between Ben's retained humanity and the calculated, sterile cruelty of the government.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, in a cinematic medium, if your protagonist is just as ruthless as the oppressor, the audience kind of loses their moral compass. Ben's refusal to become a monster, even when the rules of the game demand it, that is the actual act of rebellion, his restraint is the threat.
His refusal to play the game on their terms is what makes him a symbol for an uprising. Okay, that tracks. But, a game show requires viewers. If Ben and McConey are the products of this system, we really need to examine who is consuming the product. Like, how does a society culturally accept primetime blood sport?
And the script addresses this directly through the character of Amelia Williams.
Right, Amelia. She is this wealthy, insulated civilian whose path collides with Ben when he essentially hijacks her self-driving car to evade the hunters.
Right.
And the reviews highlighted this one specific exchange between them as the emotional anchor of the second act. Amelia is wearing this distinctly luxurious scarf, and Ben forces her to confront the fact that the retail cost of her single fashion accessory could have easily purchased the medication his daughter is currently dying without.
It's a powerful scene. That interaction forces a mechanical breakdown of Amelia's worldview. Because until that moment in the vehicle, she is a model citizen of the Freevee network. She consumes the broadcasts, she internalizes the propaganda labeling Ben as a violent criminal, and she just blindly trusts the state.
She has no reason not to, from her perspective.
Exactly.
Right.
It is not until she is physically trapped, stripped of her insulation, and forced to actually watch the network's armed guards murder innocent bystanders just to get a clear shot at Ben that her cognitive dissonance finally shatters.
And Amelia serves as a direct stand-in for the audience, or for you listening. We are often so comfortably insulated, just scrolling past profound global tragedies on our premium devices, entirely detached from the supply chains or the systemic failures that create that suffering.
Yeah.
We remain in our curated bubbles until the instability literally breaches our own front doors.
She perfectly illustrates how authoritarianism thrives on comfort, not just fear. The film really suggests that profound evil relies on good people being lulled into selective ignorance by, engaging entertainment.
Right.
But the government in this film doesn't rely solely on distraction. They actually actively fabricate reality.
Oh, this part is wild.
It is. Later in the story, Ben manages to record a whistleblower message exposing a network cover-up regarding this radioactive factory explosion. But the network intercepts the feed before it airs, and utilizing advanced AI and deepfake technology, they seamlessly alter his words in real time, completely twisting his expose into a fake sociopathic confession.
They turn his attempt at truth into literal fuel for the fire, and the viewers immediately demand a higher bounty on his head. It just highlights how terrifyingly vulnerable objective truth is when a single entity controls the technological infrastructure. I mean, the network can simply overwrite reality.
Which brings us to the climax, where that tension between reality and propaganda reaches its absolute breaking point.
So Ben manages to bluff his way onto a network jet. He claims to be carrying a bag packed with black Irish explosives. He ensures Amelia is on board, but once they reach altitude, he forces her into an escape pod with a parachute and a bag filled with revolutionary zines, ensuring the truth can spread.
Yeah.
And this leaves Ben totally alone on the aircraft for a final confrontation with McConey and the network producer, Dan Killian, played by Josh Brolin.
And the trajectory of this jet sequence marks the most profound divergence from Stephen King's novel.
Okay, tell me about the book.
So in the 1982 book, Ben is mortally wounded during the final confrontation. Knowing he has absolutely no chance of survival, he bypasses the autopilot and manually flies the commercial airliner directly into the game's network skyscraper.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is a grim kamikaze strike that kills Killian and shatters the tower, ending with Ben literally flipping the bird as the plane makes impact.
So the protagonist dies, and the system suffers a catastrophic physical blow, but the ultimate outcome for society is left entirely ambiguous. That is incredibly dark.
It really is. And the 2025 film pivots away from this entirely. Aboard the jet in the movie, Killian reveals he knew the explosives were a bluff from the start. Killian actually initiates a remote override, intending to crash the plane into his own network tower to frame Ben as an insane terrorist and justify further government crackdowns.
Right.
However, the plane is intercepted and shot down by defensive surface-to-air missiles before it reaches the city. The broadcast cuts to static. The public is told Ben Richards is dead.
But the film offers an epilogue that paints a totally different picture. The resistance actually recovers the jet's black box, exposing Killian's remote hijacking. And then we transition to this quiet grocery store, revealing Ben's wife and daughter are secretly alive and living under assumed identities.
Yeah.
And we know Ben survived and is watching over them because a missing striped child's sock mysteriously appears in their shopping bag, which is this great callback to an earlier scene.
It's a nice touch. And the narrative then shifts to the Freevee Live studio. Killian's on stage, attempting to leverage the tragedy to launch the next season of the show.
Of course he is.
Right. But the public, now aware of the black box audio, is furious. A riot breaches the studio doors, and emerging from the chaos of the crowd is Ben Richards himself.
What a moment.
He infiltrates the stage and assassinates Killian on live television. The antagonist is defeated, the family is secure, and the corrupt infrastructure essentially collapses.
So why execute such a sweeping change to the source material? Because changing a tragic sacrifice into a triumphant victory completely alters the thematic weight of the entire story.
Well, the sources point to two main driving factors. Culturally, in a post-9/11 landscape, the imagery of a protagonist intentionally flying a commercial airliner into a skyscraper carries way too much traumatic historical weight to function as a heroic, fist-pumping victory.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Yeah, it is just visually and emotionally incompatible with a blockbuster format. And secondly, modern cinematic convention heavily favors catharsis. Audiences investing 2 hours into a bleak dystopia generally demand to see the individual tear down the corrupt system rather than just being martyred against an immovable wall.
It delivers the exact emotional payoff a theater audience craves. But, and this is where it gets crazy, the Geek Tyrant editorial introduces a theory that fundamentally destabilizes everything we just discussed.
Yes.
What if that cathartic, neat resolution is a complete fabrication?
It is such a compelling argument. Several critics felt the ending was overly tidy, remarkably rushed, and somewhat artificial, especially for a director like Edgar Wright, who typically layers his films with such sharp, cynical bite.
Exactly.
Geek Tyrant suggests this artificiality is a deliberate feature, not a bug.
And the editorial builds its case by pointing out how Wright repeatedly trains the viewer to distrust the image on the screen, right? Like early in the film, we see a vivid visceral sequence where Ben violently slams Killian's head into a table.
Yeah, I remember that.
But a moment later, the film snaps back, revealing it was merely Ben's internal fantasy. He is still sitting calmly in his chair. Combined with the network's constant use of AI deepfakes to manipulate broadcasts, The movie establishes a very clear visual language. Seeing is not believing.
Following that exact logic, the geek tyrant theory posits that the entire triumphant epilogue, Ben's miraculous survival via escape pod, the sentimental striped sock at the grocery store, the perfectly timed studio riot, and the dramatic assassination of Killian, all of it might be a carefully constructed narrative produced by the Freevee network itself.
Wait, I need to test the mechanics of that theory. Are they suggesting Ben actually died in the plane crash and the network fabricated the entire rebellion?
Yes.
But how does a media company fake a live studio riot without someone on the inside leaking the truth?
Well, think about it. If a network possesses an absolute monopoly on the technological infrastructure, the cameras, and the AI necessary to render real-time deepfakes, they do not need physical actors to stage a riot.
Oh, wow.
They simply render the broadcast. Killian explicitly tells Ben on the plane that his engagement metrics are unprecedented. If Ben dies in the crash, the network suddenly has a volatile martyr and an angry populace. A smart monopoly does not fight a rebellion, it co-ops it.
They just package the revolution into a new, highly rated season of reality television.
Precisely. They manufacture the Ben Lives narrative, simulate the riot, and even fake Killian's assassination to provide the public with the illusion of victory.
That is insidious.
It is. The audience experiences the catharsis they desperately want, they feel empowered, yet they remain glued to the network's programming. The system survives by pretending to lose.
That just turns the film into a psychological trap for the viewer in the theater. Like, we demand a happy ending where the hero wins and the family is reunited. Wright delivers it, but laces it with enough artificiality to ask us, look how easily you will swallow a fabricated reality as long as it makes you feel good. It is a brilliant commentary on media literacy.
It totally elevates the film from a standard action thriller into a complex diagnostic tool. If you accept the ending at face value, it is a fun story about overcoming tyranny. But if you view it through this meta lens, it actively challenges you to examine your own susceptibility to comforting narratives in a chaotic world.
Which brings the lens directly onto you, listening right now. Consider the mechanics of your own media consumption. When you are scrolling through a feed, watching a news broadcast, or even consuming a documentary, how often are you just accepting the emotional catharsis being handed to you?
Right.
Are you analyzing the infrastructure delivering that story? Are you asking what the producer gains by making you feel righteous anger or triumphant vindication? The Running Man uses a dystopian game show to ask a very contemporary question about how seamlessly our perceptions can be managed by the screens we implicitly trust.
It is a necessary exercise in skepticism, for sure. And honestly, it leaves us with one final, profound, mechanical question to consider, kind of moving beyond the provided sources here.
Oh, what's that?
Well, let us assume the events are real. Say Ben Richards survives, the rebellion is genuine, and they successfully dismantle the Freevee network and the authoritarian state. What happens the morning after the revolution? The old regime proved that a populace can be effectively banished through AI manipulation, deepfakes, and controlled broadcasts. When the new resistance takes power and faces the impossible task of maintaining order and rebuilding society, how long until they realize they must utilize these exact same manipulative tools to keep the public aligned? Does the revolution just become the new network?
See you again in the next episode of this podcast.